G'day, how you going? Today I'd like to show you guys some alluvial prospecting techniques. I've been prospecting for about 30 years. Only been swinging a detector for about the last 6 or 7, but alluvial prospecting has always been my first love. And what I'd like to show you guys today is what I'm doing in this little creek bed here. Now this part of the world is northern Queensland, up around the top edge of the Etheridge goldfield, down the lower section of the Green Hills goldfield. And nearly every single little creek and gully in this part of the world bears gold. And what I'd like to do is explain to you exactly what I'm doing here. Now, I walked up this little creek the other day just with my 5000, just a normal 11-inch monocoil, and I picked up 3 nuggets out of this little washout. It's not even a creek line. It's not even really a gully. It's just a washout where the old timers have been digging. And I picked up 3 nuggets. The largest one being around about almost 2 grams, and the other 2 just over a gram. So I thought to myself, alluvial prospecting being my first love, I bet you there's a lot of gold on this creek that my detector just can't pick up. So I purposed this morning to find out and do a bit of sluicing, a little bit of high banking. If you have a look at the creek down through here, this is very typical of your creek, a little washout gully, a few little rock bars lying around, and that's where I was finding the nuggets. But underneath all this, of course, is bedrock. And in this part of the world, the bedrock here is basically decomposing claystone or slate stone. And in a dry creek bed like this, that makes an awesome opportunity for you to pick up a lot of gold using the very technique that I'm going to show you here now. What I've done is I've completely cleared away all the topsoil. Okay, all the overburden there, you can see it piled up beside the bucket along the bank of the creek there. Okay, it's not much, it's just a little bit of overburden. But you don't want to dig that, and the reason why you don't want to dig that, or the reason why you don't want to wash that, is because, well, for 2 very good reasons. Very rarely does the surface stuff in a creek line or a gutter hold gold. Normally, your gold, unless it's a very recent floods come through and you've got a bit of flood gold sitting around, normally the gold will go straight to the bottom of the creek and it will rest on the bedrock. And you can see what I've done here. I've literally cleaned up the bedrock to the point that I've swept it with a little banister brush. And all I'm doing is I'm taking the last maximum 1.5 inches. That's it. Now, if you have a look at this area here that I've done, what do you reckon? I reckon that's probably 1.5, maybe 1.5, nearly 2 metres by 2 metres. Average depth 1.5 inches, and that's how many buckets I've already filled up. Okay, so I've got 9 buckets already full just from taking 1.5 inches off the bottom. And that's the other reason why you don't want to take all this other stuff, because you'll fill up 20 buckets before you even get to the good gear. So I wouldn't even bother. Now, a technique that I use when I'm doing this is I'll grab a paintbrush and I'll get really meticulous and I'll sweep the floor of the bedrock. And here's a classic example. Now you can see right here where I've used my pick and I've just scraped off the layer of the clay there, but see how it turns from white here to brown? That's still surface stuff. That's still good wash which is stuck to the bedrock that I haven't lifted up. And the only reason I'm able to know that that's there is by sweeping it. So if I sweep at this paintbrush here, look very closely, you can see the gravel sitting on top of the bedrock, and that's hard cement. And I'm telling you, that's where your gold is. The old timers called this red stuff, and it was normally characterised by red because it was full of a lot of heavy minerals, black sands and a lot of ironstone. They called it mallow, and if they hit a rich pocket of mallow that was sitting on the bedrock, that's normally where the best gold was. And sometimes they'd hit pockets that contained ounces. So, really important thing here is, and I haven't swept this, I'll sweep this again. If you have a look under here, I'm sweeping it now, you can start seeing the dark coloured browny stuff. Okay, there it is, there's that mallow. And that's a nice rich pocket of mallow right there. That is fantastic. And that's where your good gold is. That's where the good gear is. I'll just pry a bit up. Righto, and you can see there's the bedrock under it. So that little tiny layer, you know, that could have pickers in it. And in this country, most certainly will have pickers in this little creek line here. Right, yeah, so once you've done that, give it another sweep and see if you missed anything. And that's pretty thorough. That's maybe showed up a tiny little bit here. And look, if you're a serious prospector, I recommend you go and get a book written by a bloke named Jack Idris called Prospecting for Gold. Okay, in my opinion, it's the Australian's Bible for gold prospecting. And this guy talks at great length about this sort of technique, and this is where I learned it from. I read that book 5 or 6 times in a row, and I've just gleaned that much information from Jack Idris. And he talks about cleaning up a little creek bed like this, and you know, he might only go home with 1 bucket. He's more meticulous than me. He might only go home with 1 bucket of dirt after spending all day just crevicing little tiny bits and pieces and thoroughly cleaning up the bedrock. But he says, by Jove, there's some gold in that bucket. Great wash under there. Look at that. Wow. Nice little deep pockets too. Let's try and bring it right down so you're either getting that white or yellow colour. And any little pockets of red, or if there's coarse gravel in it still, I'll keep scraping. Look at that. That's some good gear right there. That'll have gold in it. Absolutely no doubt about that. And one of the other things too is I always just go a little bit into the clay too. Maybe, you know, 3 or 4 mil into it. Because don't forget, when it's clay, and if and when it does get wet, the gold is just going to sink into it. It's going to sink into the first layer of it. Probably the first 3 or 4 mil. And it'll just stay there because it won't go it'll go nowhere until someone digs it up. So there's a lot of gold sitting just even in the first couple of mil of this clay, because once it hits the clay, it's going to stop. Now, essentially, yes, this is bedrock, but it's clay stone, so it's a great combination. It means the gold's going to get doubly trapped, because as you know, gold won't travel through clay. Clay stops it dead and holds onto it, won't let it go. Take someone with a little bit of know-how to come along and a little bit of luck, of course, come and scrape that clay up, and they're going to get some really good colour. So give that a sweep now. We'll see what I missed. Yeah, missed a few bits there. Okay, so I missed there, I missed there, down in there. Little red pocket over here, another pocket there. And that's why it's important to sweep it, because you can see what you're missing. Now that doesn't look like it's very thick there, but believe me, that little patch of gravel there, that's where your gold's going to be sitting. Here we go. Got the majority of that one up. Now I guess you've got to know when to stop too. I mean, you don't really want to be going more than, I'd say absolute maximum, ½ an inch into the clay, unless you're still getting good, consistent, coarse gravel through it. If you're getting coarse gravel through the clay, then it may be worth going a little bit deeper, because it means at some stage the clay was wet and soft enough for that coarse gravel to get embedded into it, and if that's the case, most likely little nuggets too. So it's a little bit of a labour of love, this, and yeah, it's quite time consuming, but I tell you what, mate, at the end of the day, when you do that final clean up after whacking it all through your sloughs, it's bloody well worth it, I tell you. It can be, especially if you get, you know, something like a good 1/4 to ½ an ounce just off a 2 metre squared paddock like this. I mean, it's not much, is it? You know, 2 metres squared, and there's potential here to get maybe 1/4 of an ounce. Now you start doing the math on that, this is payable ground, if that's the case. If you're going to do a creek, you've got to do it properly, just like that, because if you don't pick up that real bottom stuff, what's going to happen is someone else is going to come along and they're going to see that you've done all the hard work and you've moved all the big rocks and you've left all the best gold on the bottom.